Welcome to Legal Innovation Spotlight, the podcast that brings you the latest advancements in legal tech and knowledge management. I'm Ted Theodoropoulos, and I connect with the industry's brightest minds to provide you with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Julien, how are you this afternoon?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's a little cold here in St. Louis, but you're in Belgium, correct?
Exactly. I'm currently in Ghent in Belgium, so it's on the north side of Belgium.
Is it cold there as well?
So it's getting warmer. We had a couple of weeks where it was very, very cold. I hope we'll get the sun very soon.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me today, and I thought it would be a really interesting conversation around your past with Henchman, and now you guys are part of Lexis. But before we jump in, why don't you take a couple minutes, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you do it?
Sure. So my name is Julien. I'm born and raised in Belgium. Part of the team at Henchman. So I lead the product team. That means that I'm responsible for leading the product strategy, vision, and then executing it together with our team. I'm part of the team since 2 years. Together with the founders, we've been working very hard at building out this company. The founders are 3 people, young entrepreneurs from Ghent, tech entrepreneurs. And they started the business about 4 years ago.
Yeah, and you guys have had quite the trajectory. So I think Henchman was founded in 2021 and then acquired last year. Is that right?
Exactly. So in the summer of last year, 2024, it's been an amazing ride. So the company got founded indeed 4 years ago, just at the beginning of the COVID crisis. The whole idea of the founding was when the founders sat together with some friends who were lawyers, and they were discussing ideas. And from there, the idea was sort of born to help lawyers find precedent language, so clauses and definitions they had written before, and from there it really was being built out. We quickly built a prototype and then iterated with customers here in Belgium, but also elsewhere. And then we got. I'm sure we're going to talk about it in just a bit. Started talking with Lexis over a year ago, and then that led to the recent acquisition of our company.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite amazing and unusual in the legal tech world. I've been in it for quite some time, and you don't see, zero to acquisition happen that quickly because for a number of reasons. But in the law firm world, especially in big law, it takes a little while usually to build market share because law firms operate on the concept of precedence. They want to know, what other law firms their size you do business with. And if you go into certain markets like New York, like they want to know what New York law firms you work with. And when you're breaking into the market, sometimes that takes a while, but you guys did it in very short order.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a combination of different things. So if I look at the team of Henchman, we're all people who have been through scaling technology companies before. And you could really feel that energy. We quickly also looked at outside of Belgium, quickly went into the US market. We're at a lot of events, created a lot of a buzz with our messaging. But I think what really was a big part of our success was our laser focus on a very, very specific problem that exists throughout the world. And that problem is specifically with, legal professionals that negotiate and draft complex and bespoke contracts. They had a real pain of a lot of them are, of course, relying on their own precedents or precedents of their colleagues. And before Henchman existed, that was a real pain. They had to go through a DMS, go open multiple documents and find that one particular clause that they once had written, and that's a very painful flow. So I think the founders really found that problem worth solving, and then worked very closely in doing that. And I think our focus on that particular problem allowed us to really build a very compelling product that resonated around the world.
Yeah, and you guys, to your credit, I from afar, I admired your marketing, and your sales efforts. I love Steve. Wasn't that his name?
Yeah, Steve Litt.
Yeah, I mean, that was such an interesting character, and it's kind of hard to sometimes to pull off, comedy in marketing. Sometimes it comes off as dumb and cheesy, and you guys managed to nail it. Like, did the concept for that campaign, I mean, was that internally? Did you have some external help? Because it was so entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, all the credits to our marketing founder, Jorn, and our entire team, marketing team, who, of course, built up the idea and then iterated on top of that. I was also amazed when joining Henchman at the taste. Actually, it's very tasteful, the marketing material. And it got a lot of appeal. I mean, everybody's talking about Steve Litt. I mean, even the announcement video we did with Lexus had a really a good flavor of that. And I think that really helped spread the message. It intrigued a lot of people. And then when we then actually came to the product, because that's really the message we carry for ourselves. We take maybe ourselves not too seriously, but our product super, super serious. And you could really see that in everything we do.
What happened to Steve? Is he still around?
He's definitely still around. And I mean, he's gone on to do other things. But yeah, he's definitely still around. Yeah.
Gotcha. Are we going to see him in any future campaigns, or did he?
We might. So
okay.
No comment.
There you go. Good. Keep us guessing. What was the growth like, I guess in your case, locally in the EU versus US? Did you immediately jump into the US market, or did you initially gain some momentum in the EU?
We initially gained some momentum in the EU, especially in our home markets around. I think it's important to mention, of course, our product is helping to surface precedent language. From the get-go, we wanted to make our product language agnostic. So that means that any language, Latin and Cyrillic, could be supported by our product. And that allowed, I mean, for Europe in particular, that's super important. The way we really spread ourselves was focusing on hubs in countries. So, for example, in Sweden, Finland, Germany, Paris, in France, we went in and find innovative firms, and then they were the early adopters, and that helped spread around the area. What we found as well is that, especially with the rise of ChatGPT, a lot of the firms were looking at each other. How are you doing things? And how are you doing things with generative AI? And there was a lot of meetups. We organized our own meetups where we were explaining our vision around Gen AI. And that helped to create a lot of buzz here in Europe. I think we started doing US, fairly quickly, not from the get-go, but fairly quickly. We didn't, let's say, hire people there. What we did directly, is we traveled a lot to the US, to a lot of conferences, and then got initial traction, also signed 2 of the MLaw 200 firms in that first year. So that was a good early step for the growth that we now have. So it's been, a combination, of course, but I think what resonates really well around the world was it was the same problem we're solving. Even, in Europe, US, all of these lawyers were looking for precedent language, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, and I did an episode that was released just the other day with Jack Shepard from iManage, and we were talking about enterprise search. And enterprise search has had mixed success in the legal market. It's a really hard project to pull off. It's very expensive. There's a huge corpus of data that has to be crawled and indexed. It sounds like you guys early on didn't go that direction very intentionally. It sounds like you really wanted to be a niche point solution. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So I think the focus was particularly on helping to find clauses and definitions that you have worked on before. And I think that focus really allowed us to go very, very special. For example, one of the features that we also included is a version history of clauses. Now, that's one of our more advanced functionalities, but we recognize that contracts get negotiated back and forth, and these are all individual files, often stored on one folder in the DMS, and maybe not under the version history of the DMS, but we could automatically detect that. Well, we've built a very specific algorithm that detects that and can then match how clauses got evolved over time. And that's a very, very specific use case we could only do by focusing on that particular data type. And that's so useful. I mean, imagine, what you can do is, for example, you're in a front, you want to find a clause, a liability clause you've written before for that same client, the same opposing counsel many years ago. With one click, you can find it and can see how it got negotiated back in the day and what was ultimately accepted. Those insights are so useful for your drafting, preparation for the negotiation. All of that lives in the DMS. You could just not easily find it, and now you can.
Interesting. And how has your integration with Lexis been? Well, first of all, how long has it been? Was that mid last year?
So the integration with Lexis and our combined products are actually launching end of this month at time of this recording. So that means end of January. So the journey started, many months before that. I think more than a year ago. And I think we started talking with each other because we obviously have same clients, but a lot of our clients were telling us, well, it's good to find our own language, but it would be good to also have language from, for example, practical guidance being in the search results as well. So that led us to start talking to Lexis, for example. And Lexis actually had very similar requests, but in the other way. So they have all of this premium content, of course, but their customers were saying, well, actually, I prefer also my own data to be surfaced in these search experience or in AI solutions. So that led us really to come together. And I'm very excited that, of course, in the last 6 months after we announced the acquisition this summer, our teams have been very hard at work to make that reality. So that means, beginning now 2025, we're launching 2 combined products. One in Plus AI. We are launching the integration to your DMS. That means that you can ask Plus AI, for example, to draft a particular clause or a particular document, and it will ground its answer on data coming from your DMS with the sources mentioned there. And then we're also launching Create Plus, which is a Microsoft Word add-in, very much similar to what Henchman offered before. But it includes all of the Henchman capabilities with all of the create capabilities that existed before, a lot of proofreading and other smart drafting capabilities. So this is what we're launching beginning this year. And it's really been a lot of effort this last 6 months to bring that together. But it's really under this shared vision of bringing premium content from Lexis together with DMS data and very advanced AI solutions all together in products that are close to you.
Interesting. And tell me a little bit about the architecture of the solution and your document processing methodology. How does all that work?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of the secret sauce, I would say, but I can give you some insights because, of course, I believe in transparency. I mean, that's always the conversation that we have with law firms. So what happens, right? So we connect with the DMS of the law firm. So that's either an on-prem solution or in the cloud. We are often talking or integrated with a part of the DMS. So typically it's, for example, going live for certain practice groups, or we're only looking at the last 5 years worth of data. We can automatically exclude all the emails, for example. So what we then do is we process all of the documents. We recognize what is a contract and what is not. And then if it's a contract, we take out clauses and definitions. We then generate a lot of metadata, also mirror metadata that is on the DMS, mirror the whole security framework that is in the DMS. So you're only allowed to see what you're allowed to see in the DMS. And then basically build this index of your previously written clauses and definitions. And then that's the search experience that you can find in Create Plus and in Plus AI.
And is this DMS agnostic, or are you just iManage or just NetDocs?
We support all the major DMSs, so the ones you mentioned, iManage, NetDocuments, but we also support OpenText, Google Drive, and SharePoint.
Interesting. And so it doesn't sound like, one of the challenges, we're not a search company, but we are search adjacent, I would say. And I've had a front row seat to a lot of search projects in legal, enterprise search projects. And I've seen firms that recrawl and index their entire DM corpus, hundreds of millions of documents, and spend an obscene amount of money on licensing a search framework and just the supporting infrastructure. We had one client was spending $20,000, $30,000 a month in Azure consumption to do this.
Wow.
That didn't include the licensing fee for the framework. It didn't include the implementation of the project. It did not include the ongoing internal staff support required to keep it running. So all in, they were in seven figures for this search project, and not really that big of a firm. They were maybe just inside the AmLaw 50, I think. So you're not, I guess your solution to this, you're not taking that approach like this is either a subset, is the area of the DMS that you tap into, is that curated, or do you just narrow it down by practice and by date?
Yeah, so practice date, and there's a whole range of other criteria that we could leverage. It's often, in collaboration with the firm. So every firm is unique, so it really varies. But we don't necessarily look at only a curated data set. I can talk about our strategy around that in just a bit as well. But especially if we're integrated, what we are very focused on is the particular use case, helping you service clauses and definitions you've written before, and that's finding the needle in the haystack, if you may. And the way we measure that, and obviously then work together with the firm to optimize that, is the conversion to useful action. And what this means is that for every search request that happens in Henchman, we measure, did that search experience end in a user doing something useful with it or not? And that conversion to useful action shows us relevancy of our search experience. So our collaboration with the firm is looking at that number and optimizing that over time. And we see that increases by number of parameters that we can implement, but also just over time as users are getting familiar with it. So that's really how we measure and collaborate with the firm to make sure that, of course, we're helping everybody in the firm find what they're looking for.
How do you know if they've done something useful with?
So it's a set of actions in the add-in. So it's either taking a copy, doing something with the search results. It's a set of let's say actions that a user can do.
I see. And then how do you handle multi-jurisdictional and language challenges? I mean, it would seem, especially in the EU, you've got a multitude of, how is all that managed?
So I think our processing of contracts that actually determines, oh, this is a clause and this is another clause. Is actually a complex set of rules that is looking at the structure of documents rather than actually what is written inside of it. Whereas a lot of, let's say, NLP solutions are really just looking at the text. We're doing a combination of it, but primarily looking at the structure that allowed us to be language agnostic from the get-go, from the start. And so that is sort of almost that secret sauce. But we do have some machine learning models that, for example, recognize the contract type, jurisdiction of every document, and that is metadata that is added on top that allows you to filter in the add-in to exactly the sort of set of clauses or precedents that you're looking for.
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about Gen AI these days, right? It's the topic du jour, and an interesting one. We talk about it a lot on the podcast. I'm an avid user of Gen AI, but AI has existed in legal for many, many years.
Of course, yeah.
How much of what you're doing is machine learning versus Gen AI versus just kind of rules-based algorithms?
So I can't tell sort of exact percentages, but it's really a combination of those three.
Yeah.
And so rule-based is really helping us determine, well, this most likely looks like a contract or not. This is nested clauses. Definitions are most often a separate section in the contract and are typically defined as such. We have machine learning models, I mentioned it already, recognize contract type, jurisdiction, and a whole range of other metadata. And then Gen AI, it does help us with some very specific use cases. So let me give you some examples. So one of the things that we have is a smart replace function. So imagine you're looking at a search result, very particular precedent, and there's a word mentioned, sellers, so plural. In the contract you're working on, every seller is just singular. With just one click of a button, you'll replace the word, but all the grammar will also be taken into account. That's a Gen AI capability that just allows you to just quickly match that search results to the contract you're working on. That's one example of applying Gen AI. Another one is when you're, for example, comparing two clauses with each other, the one in your contract and the one of the search results. We leverage Gen AI to create a table that discusses or that lists all of the key topics that are mentioned in both clauses and the differences in between. So you can quickly benchmark against your standard or precedent within your database. So we're using our combination of these three. And for all, it's all about what works best for that use case, right? And for what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So in that example that you just gave, leveraging Gen AI, I don't see a big risk where hallucinations would come into play. Is that a risk you have to manage at all with the Gen AI aspects of the platform?
I mean, of course, I think that's always sort of an area, and we test for that a lot. So what we've done is built evaluation scenarios, so possible inputs that could be in a particular functionality. And then we let a legal team or a legal experts team evaluate, is everything configured? Is the prompts correctly configured? The types of inputs correctly maintained to produce the most accurate or the most hallucination-free result. We also, just explain to the user, look, this is AI generated, and please use this with caution. I think that's a fairly standard and general practice nowadays, so that everybody is aware where this comes from.
Gotcha. And you mentioned prompting. Like, how much of this is point and click, and how much requires actual prompting from your end users?
All of it is just clicking a button, and then everything happens behind the scenes. We do have some capabilities where you can just say, hey, help me. Like there's a free text field where you can just prompt and make a suggestion. But most of the capabilities that we have are really just one click away.
I see. Yeah, so you guys started in 2021, and most people think that Gen AI started in November of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Transformers, which is the technology that Gen AI is based on, the paper for that, Attention is All You Need, I think is the paper that's become very infamous. That was 2017, 2016. So AI
Mm-hmm.
existed prior to, and machine learning's been around for a very long time.
Yeah,
Where do you see, you kind of have a front row seat, not only with your work at Henchman, but Lexus is a leader in the space. How big a role and how quickly do you see Gen AI making real transformation in legal?
I think we're only at the beginning of what AI can do for us. I think what everybody sort of recognizes a lot of the low value task, initial draft generation, helping me to understand all different kinds of emails, summarization of long texts, helping me organize thoughts. These are just very sort of the beginning of everything. We believe at Lexus that we can build, or that every legal professional will have an AI agent that is really there by their side, and knows their work, their style, and their expertise, and can really help with very specific tasks. Those today are, let's say more general ones, but are increasingly going to become more practice group oriented, very specific things, and we'll see a lot more relevance to that, and will help elevate the legal professional so that they can be a lot more closer to their clients and support them much more strategically. So I'm very bullish about how it will impact the legal world. I think we just need to continue to experiment a lot. I think that's crucial, and we need to be open to that. There's going to be a lot of fails, but it's crucial for the innovation to flourish, and we need to also understand that the interface needs to be as easy as possible. So I don't believe that we need to ultimately sort of train everybody to become the best prompt engineers. I think we need to be a lot more smarter in how can we build best user experience that is basically either sort of voice to text, or that can really understand all of the different intricacy of, or sort of what the lawyer is doing, and can talk to the LLMs or on models in the right way. So to me, that's really the key two things that we have to continue to focus on. But obviously, I'm very hopeful that that will have a huge impact on the legal world.
Well, you mentioned experimentation, and we've largely there's surveys out there that don't line up with reality on what adoption is actually taking place, at least in the practice of law. I think there have been some business of law use cases a little where AI's made further inroads, but there's not a lot happening today in the practice of law. And but that's starting to change, but it's mostly been experimentation. And, you see the ILTA Tech survey came back and said that, I actually have it up right here. 74% of law firms with more than 700 lawyers are using AI for business tasks. Well, what does that mean, really? Does that mean a lawyer Googled ChatGPT? Or does that mean they're using tools like yours in practice? And what I found interesting, 74%, which is totally aspirational,
Right.
And then I saw another survey from Thomson Reuters from 2 weeks ago that said that only 10% of law firms have a Gen AI policy. Yeah. So it's like, okay, if 74% are using it and 10% have a policy around it, that's a disconnect. And it feels to me that we're still in that experimentation phase. And I believe that is going to continue through at least the first half of the year. This is just gut feel. Don't really have data to support it, but we do business with dozens of AM law firms, and we kind of get a nice cross-sectional view. I attend 10, 12 conferences a year. So I get my ears to the ground on this. And it feels like the first half of the year is going to continue to be experimentation. And then second half of the year, maybe even Q4, we'll see some more like real traction in terms of practice of law use cases leveraging AI. How do you feel about the timeline? Do you see it the same or differently?
Yeah, I sort of the same. I think what I see a lot is that firms are setting up AI task groups, group of maybe young lawyers who are sort of tasked with, hey, experiment with it and sort of help us craft its AI policy. I think those are poised to continue to exist as more advanced models will continue to be come out. What I often warn for firms and are sort of pilot fatigue. So we see that happen a lot where there's a lot of legal AI or legal tech solutions coming out, and almost everybody wants to sort of start to try it out. And what often happens is that it's just thrown to lawyers. Hey, try this, without their actual preparation of, okay, what are we trying to test here? What are we trying to succeed? So I think, we warn and collaborate with firms on very diligently of like, okay, well, you're going to test this. What are you trying to achieve here? What are our success criteria? Are we adequately informing all of the participants here to test this out and then determine the success after that, so that you don't create pilot fatigue, because that is then the worst that could happen. That of course everybody's just discouraged. Well, it's not really fitting what I want because that was not really aligned, and that of course is very detrimental to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's where KM plays a key role, is being the filter, and KM is uniquely positioned, and that's why KM should be leading AI. If KM exists in a law firm, some firms, smaller firms especially, they don't have a KM group. But having KM who understands, many are lawyers and they understand the practice of law, they understand the firm culture, and being the filter and being selective about what actually gets in front of the timekeepers, because they have aggressive goals and expectations around the delivery of work. And if you're going to distract them, you better have a good reason, because you're going to have a much harder time distracting them the second time if the first go round it wasn't productive. So yeah, what role do you see KM professionals playing in this era of AI? I think they've become more important. I've heard chatter around, okay, what do we need KM for? We've got AI. Nonsense. You need KM more than ever, is the way I see it. I don't know if you agree.
I agree. I think KM plays a crucial role in all of this indeed. What we've seen is that we cannot just connect with the DMS. So, and we've really learned this through deploying henchmen through a number of different very large firms around the world, and it's really, this idea of, okay, well, we have all of the contracts, all the precedents live in one unstructured way, and we integrate with that and we help organize whatever is there. But very often, you have what you're talking about, just the KM team that created templates, know-how, everything is sort of curated in a particular folder. And what we've learned is that we're also going to integrate with that. But we're going to allow KMs to have influence on how that appears in the search results, and ultimately also how it is ranked in it. And this is where sort of the magic really comes in, where, for example, a firm, we integrate with iManage. That's really where all of their deals are and all the contracts. Okay, all of that is structured in our index. And then we also integrate with the SharePoint, for example, where a lot of the KM content lives. All of the KM content is labeled very specifically and then gets boosted to the top of the search experience. So that means that if you're looking at particular clause, indemnities, or anything else, you first stumble upon what is our sort of internal standards and then other relevant precedents. And you can really build a nuanced view for your draft. And I mean, that's sort of giving tools to the KM. We have a lot of more ideas. For example, one of the things we recently launched is giving KM attorneys the insights into what is being searched for within the DMS using Henchman. So what are searches that have 0 search results? So that's really a gap in knowledge. I mean, people are looking for that, but there's actually nothing appearing. So, I mean, we might want to prioritize some work here. What are precedents that everybody's constantly looking back at? And maybe that's something we want to look at and then curate as well. So these are now insights that we can give that allow KMs to help produce what we call dynamic knowledge management, very versus traditional knowledge management that was really a longer process. I had to bring a lot of people around the table, and it was very hard to maintain. So for us, KMs play a crucial role in helping to create the search experience a lot more relevant and tapping into the workflow. So all with the goal of supporting the legal professional with their new drafts and in their negotiation.
Yeah, you mentioned searches with 0 results, maybe being a gap in knowledge. It's usually a gap in the search index or a gap in the search strategy. I've found usually the data exists, but it's either incorrectly indexed or there's usually the information is usually there. It's just not very findable. But how does how do you think about measuring search relevancy and user adoption? Obviously, there's the extreme cases where you got 0 search results. We know that's a gap, but in general, how are you tracking relevancy of the output of your platform?
Combination of 2 things. One is we've built our own data sets and build our own tests or sort of test scenarios, and our teams or legal expert teams are evaluating the relevance, recall, and precision of the search of that. So that's, of course, using our own data sets, and it's evaluating the algorithms that are constantly evolving. That, of course, I mean, doesn't mimic the real life scenario where, I mean, it's client data that is being used, and that's where conversion to useful action. So what I was describing before helps us indicate, well, are users doing something with the search results? It's not 100%. Let's say it will sometimes be inaccurate, but it gives us largely a direction of, okay, are we actually producing relevant search results? And what we want to see is trends that are going up, of course. And it's, like I mentioned before, a way in which we are collaborating. So if we're looking, for example, at a low conversion to useful action number in a particular firm, we know we need to do some things in the configuration, like you're saying. Sometimes it's not findable because it's somewhere else, or we didn't index it properly. Well, that's all. We have a whole tool set that allows to discover that and to optimize for that. And I think that's ultimately the secret secret sauce of Henchman. Those capabilities together with our capability to index these individual clauses. So that's really how we go about it.
Interesting. How much work is there between practice areas and implementing? We at Infodash, we're an intranet extranet platform. There is a tremendous amount of services that have to be delivered as part of our product. It's a blessing and a curse, right? It doesn't allow us to just, it's not like Dropbox. You download setup.exe, you run it, and you're off to the races. There's all this plumbing that has to be built in, and then the clients want customizations. So, it's, we really enjoy that work because we get to see our product get brought to life, but there's a lot of it. In fact, probably 40% of our revenue is services related. Like, how much work is required on your end across different practices to implement the platform?
I'm going to give a nuanced answer because actually it's not a lot of work. So we have a record for putting a customer live from signing the contract to actually user using it, and it was 24 hours. So within 24 hours, database got connected, we indexed everything, and then they started to use it. It's a small firm out of New York, and small disclaimer, but just to say it can be quite quickly. Now, if we're talking about a big firm with multiple locations, multiple practice group, a huge database with a lot of security controls, that might take a couple of days. There's a lot of people involved, and then we're sort of largely dependent on how can we bring the right people into the meeting? Do we understand what we're actually solving for? There's also a whole range of configuration that help tailor the search experience. So we can group people or group users in teams per practice group, for example, and then we can help you. Well, the real estate team only needs to look at this set of the data, and all of the rest is really irrelevant. So all of that is part of the configuration that can be done. So the nuanced answer is it can be within 24 hours, but it can also be a lot more if we're really sort of tailoring it for, let's say, more complex scenarios, which is very normal and standard. But it's important to mention that there's no technical involvement needed. Everything is all configuration, all sort of tailoring the integration.
Wow. Yeah, I chuckled when you said days because, like, I'm jealous.
Yes.
I mean, it takes months for us. Like, we can actually install in 2 hours our product.
Right.
And wiring up integrations, we've done it a million times. That doesn't take long either. It's really kind of the envisioning process and getting out of users' heads what they want to see. And there's a big visual component, obviously, to intranets and extranets. Well, I know we're almost at... Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, I mean, it's really a core foundational part of our product strategy. We know that lawyers have almost no time. They want to have things quickly. And we really built everything with a very quick time to value. And we invested a lot in our integrations with iManage, NetDocuments, all the DMSs. We work very closely with them to understand what are all of the different configurations that we need to support. So all of that is baked in the products.
Yeah, that's incredible that you guys are able to get that short of a runway to get off the ground. Well, I know we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you one final question, and that was, like, what is your, and it's going to be a little open-ended, but what is your future vision for AI-enabled workflows outside of just the scope of where your product plays today? What do you see coming down the runway with AI and legal workflows? I know this is supposed to be the year of agents. I actually think that's going to be next year. That's just my personal opinion. I think there's way too much uncertainty today with how AI responds. I mean, you can take the exact same prompt, put it into the AI platform of your choice, and you're going to get different answers a good percentage of the time, which makes the decision tree navigation a little challenging. But I don't know, what's your vision for the short term and where AI is going to add value in legal?
I think we're going to see a lot of combination of technologies. So Gen AI that has its virtues and has its drawbacks, rule-based technologies, just machine learning models that we talked about before, and bringing these three together and really making sure that it's sort of weighted to what is more important. For example, for billing issues, you might want to look more at very closely precise things versus if you're looking at more inspiration for Gen AI. So I think short term, we're going to see a lot of these things are coming together. Whereas before we sort of had applications where pure Gen AI or pure rule based, and I think the future is really definitely a combination of those two.
Yeah. Well, how do people find out more about? Are you still called Henchman? Are you Create Plus now?
No, so I mean we're the DMS capabilities within Plus AI and DMS capabilities within Create Plus. You can definitely go to the websites of LexisNexis, and that's where you will find a lot about Plus AI, which is really serviced by Protégé, and then Create Plus. So in those two products, we're living today.
Gotcha. Good stuff. And I see you on LinkedIn from time to time, not super active, but you're there as well in case people want to connect.
Absolutely.
Well, good stuff. I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me this afternoon, and I hope to chat again with you soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content. Want to dive deeper into the world of legal innovation? Connect with us online at getinfodash.com, where you'll find additional resources and articles. You can also follow us on social media at getinfodash to stay updated on the latest news and insights in the field of legal tech and knowledge management. Once again, thank you for joining us today on Legal Innovation Spotlight, a fireside chat series hosted by Infodash.